Hey there, Hexers. This is Function here. So it's day 3 of my challenge to put out one piece of content every day until alpha launches, and it looks like I'm going to be able to make it after all. I was already able to finish one piece of content today, but I wanted to postpone it for release until tomorrow just because it was going to work better with my whole plan, you know? So I was kind of facing a problem today. Would I be able to come up with 2 pieces in one day? And it looks like I'm going to be able to after all. I wanted to make sure it was something that was like still high enough quality for you guys, still something you would enjoy, and it looks like I was able to after all. What are we going to be talking about today? Well, we're going to be looking at what I think the top 5 commons are for limited play, primarily focusing on draft. But you know, if you open one of these in sealed, you're still going to definitely be clicking your heels. You're still going to probably be playing it, and you're still going to probably have cats making noise in the background. Oh yeah. Anyway, so let's look. What were some of my key factors in evaluating the power level of the cards? Well, the first one was just power level of the individual card, and that's how likely is this card to win you the game. The next one was threat level, which is how quickly does your opponent need to deal with this threat before they lose the game. And you know, a lot of these cards that made the top 5 are all pretty big threats. Initially I was going to do a top 10, and that was kind of like how I was narrowing down cards. When I got it down to top 5, I realized, you know, these are all pretty much bombs, which is what a threat is. So the power level and the threat are pretty much synonymous, but it just was a big contributing factor for the rest of the cards that I crossed off the list maybe. Next up is resilience, and this is how hard is a card to deal with. You know, maybe it's got evasion and it's hard to block, so there's not a whole lot of troops that can deal with it in combat. Maybe it's got a really high defense and there's not a whole lot of removal or combat tricks that can take care of it. That kind of stuff is what was going into the resilience factor. Now, if a card isn't a troop, it might still have resilience in that it still has staying power after you played it, but yeah, that was the main factor there. And finally, there's versatility, which is kind of 2 different aspects. Does this card only fit in one very narrow archetype? Maybe it's very good in that archetype, but outside of it, it's just not going to be that strong. So that was one of the things for versatility. The other was just how deep is a particular color, or how deep is that archetype. If I'm being really aggressive and I'm trying to play blue cards, well, maybe there's not a whole lot of blue cards that are really aggressive, and so that's going to narrow stuff down. Alright, so let's look at what the top 5 are. At number 5, we've got Veteran Gladiator. This is probably the least bomby of the 5 for sure, but he's definitely still very strong. What he does is he automatically slots in to extremely aggressive Ruby or possibly Ruby Blood decks. You're going to be playing an aggressive troop on turn 1 and turn 2, and then on turn 3 you slam dunk with Veteran Gladiator. On turn 4 you're going to be swinging in, removing one of their blockers from combat, and just doing a whole ton of damage. So Veteran Gladiator kind of fills this weird role where he's removal because he's taking a card out of combat they're not able to block. He's not removing it from the game, but he's removing it from the part of the game that you care about. The part that's kind of unfortunate about him is that he needs to attack each turn, and that kind of lowers his resiliency. If he's the only card you're playing and you have no board whatsoever, he's probably going to die in combat so long as your opponent has 2 creatures he can block with. Or you're going to take out the strongest of the 2, and he's still going to be able to block with the weakest and kill your guy. Or maybe you take out the weakest of the 2, attack with Veteran Gladiator, and he has to block with the strongest one, and Gladiator is still able to at least trade with it. Well, that's not such a bad situation. And that's why I still keep Veteran Gladiator in the top 5, is there's a lot of situations where he kind of does something that other troops can't. If you're playing an aggressive deck, or you're just a player that really heavily favors aggressive styles, Veteran Gladiator is going to be one of your go-to cards. The final thing I do want to say about him is the fact that he's got only 1 Ruby threshold rather than 2 definitely swings things a little bit in his favor. You can splash Veteran Gladiator somewhat easily if you're primarily aggressive and in other colors. Alright, so what's up at number 4 if Gladiator's number 5? Alright, so at number 4 is Angelic Ascension. What it is it's a quick action that says target troop transforms into an angel. An angel is a 5/5 creature with flight, and since it's a quick action, you can even use this during your opponent's turn. That gives Angelic Ascension an incredible amount of flexibility. It can be used as multiple different types of cards. It could be removal, it could be a combat trick, or it could just be a bomb on its own. The drawback though is Angelic Ascension definitely opens yourself up to get blown out. You need to be careful about what you choose to transform into an angel. You also need to be careful about when you choose to do it. If your opponent still has a lot of resources available and many cards in their hand, you might want to think about saving Angelic Ascension for another couple turns until your opponent kind of lets their guard down and gives you the right opportunity. Because say you played Angelic Ascension on a 0-1 Battle Hopper. You're hoping to turn it into a 5-5 flyer with flight and just start swinging in for all kinds of damage. Well, unbeknownst to you, your opponent's been holding back a burn the entire time waiting for you to play it. As soon as you play Angelic Ascension, they remove your Battle Hopper. Not only did you not get the flyer, but you also committed an entire 5 resources, which is probably your entire turn into doing so. Don't get the wrong idea though. There's nothing that I can find at either the common or uncommon slot that trumps a 5-5 flyer. It's just the effort that you have to put into getting Angelic Ascension into play is what keeps it from being higher on the list. Alright, speaking of which, let's look at what number 3 is. Number 3 is Corrupt Harvester. It's a 3/3 troop with life drain, but that's not it. It's also got this troop can't be blocked except by artifact troops and or blood troops. At first glance, you might say, you know what, Corrupt Harvester isn't connecting for all that much damage. But that's not really the point. The point is that you can play a card like Corrupt Harvester, leave the rest of your guys back on defense, and slowly whittle away your opponent with him, or you can use Corrupt Harvester defensively. Your opponent isn't going to be able to attack all that well, because if you block even his weakest guy with Corrupt Harvester, you're probably going to be gaining life back and killing his, 2-3 Battle Hopper or something. So Corrupt Harvester is definitely pretty powerful. He serves a bunch of different roles, and that's the reason that I put him higher than Angelic Ascension. He's easy to put online, and once he does get online, if your opponent's not able to find a way to answer Corrupt Harvester and take him out of the game, they're going to have to all of a sudden become extremely aggressive, because they're going to have to counteract that life drain, and your evasive guy is going to be that much more dangerous for them. Alrighty, speaking of dangerous and evasive, let's move to number 2. So number 2 is Cloud Titan. For 5 resources and 2 Sapphire Threshold, you're able to get a 4/4 for flight. Now you might say, you know what, that's weaker than Angelic Ascension is. Angelic Ascension gets you a 5/5 with flight. But you kind of have to commit 2 cards in order to get that 5/5, whereas with Cloud Titan, you know what you're getting, and you're going to get it that much more often. It's a much more consistent card, and really when it comes down to it, a 4/4 with flight isn't really that much worse than a 5/5 with flight. It's still going to end the game very, very quickly. Not only that, but since it has that 4 defense, it's going to be able to block pretty profitably, and if you haven't already stabilized the game to the extent that you can attack safely with Cloud Titan and leave other things back, well, he's going to be able to stay back himself on defense, and he's going to get a lot of work done for you. I can say pretty comfortably that I would take Cloud Titan over a majority of the commons. It is kind of awkward that Boulder Brute, a socketed common troop, is effectively another copy of Cloud Titan, but he's common. So, that is a small caveat, but that doesn't take away from Cloud Titan's power. He's definitely a strong troop. But what's the number 1 card? What's the card that I would actually take over every single uncommon as well as every common? Can you guess? Well, let's see. And like I was saying, I would take this card over everything except for an extremely powerful rare. Burn to the Ground is number 1, and it's the only card on the list that's not really a troop. So Angelic Ascension, sure, it doesn't have troop in its type line, but it really is a troop. You're creating that 5/5 angel. Burn to the Ground, on the other hand, nope, it's not a troop. It's just a straight up action, and what it does is very simple but very powerful. So however many resources you have available in a turn, you can just pour them all into Burn to the Ground and deal that much damage either to target champion or target troop. There's going to be some removal, like Murder, that's a lot more flexible than Burn to the Ground is when it comes to actually killing troops, but what Burn to the Ground has going for it is that it has this second mode, this mode where you just kill your opponent. And who cares about efficiently killing troops when you can just end the game right then and there by killing your opponent? Yeah, I think I'd rather take the win the majority of the time. So the biggest thing that's going for Burn to the Ground is that you're never in any rush to play it. So long as you got in for some early damage, every turn that you hold on to Burn to the Ground, it's that much more likely that it's going to kill your opponent. Say you're just in top deck mode and all you're drawing are resources, but you're holding that Burn in the Ground in your hand. Well, each turn that you draw a resource, you're going to be that much closer to being able to take your opponent out of the game. And say things go wrong. Say you have it and you're not able to finish your opponent off, they place a massive dragon. Well, you know what? Next turn, you're almost at a guaranteed chance that you're going to be able to kill that dragon so long as you've got 5 resources. There's very little that Burn to the Ground can't kill. So I could talk about a simple card like this for quite a long time, which is one of the great things I love about Hex. You know, even the simple things, they found a great way to make them fit. I can't wait to finally draft the game. It's going to be probably a week or two after alpha launches that we'll be able to draft. But in the meantime, I'll just be playing all kinds of constructed. Speaking of alpha, if you haven't already, I really suggest you visit the fan site forums on the official Hex site, because there's a whole bunch of people. All the other fan sites are putting out spoilers, and with a little luck, I'm going to have one for you guys Friday morning. So definitely tune in my channel Friday morning. Tomorrow, I should have an article up on HexVault, and be sure to check that out. Finally, like I've been saying all week, I can't wait for alpha. If you're once you guys get in there, if you see me playing, definitely, shoot me a whisper, see if I'm up to anything. I'd be down for a game. Yeah, I can't wait. I'm really, really excited. So it looks like I made my challenge after all. Until tomorrow, less fail, more function.